Right, should be able to hear me now. Well, I am home now, and I mean, it is 24th of December at 8:47 and almost 9 o'clock. So I think that I can carry on streaming now for a little bit. I don't know how much for, but yeah, I'm gonna eat my food and carry on make my paper flowers and yeah.
Take you 4 hours, 3 hours.
Fair play.
6 hours, I don't know. Now, the only way to win in business and the only way to make progress is iteration. And every single thing that you observe that is good has typically come around or come about because of iteration. And so here are some examples of things that have been iterated to get to where they are today. So, for example, democracy. As a species, and since the birth of civilization, all of 3,000-4,000 years ago, depending on which historian you ask, we've experimented with lots and lots of different societal structures. We've given ancient Greek democracy a go. The Romans had a different idea with the Senate and the Republic, and then we've had dictatorships and communism. Like we've really played around with this democracy thing, and in the West, democracy as we know it seems to function to a degree, and that's the result of lots and lots of iteration over, like thousands of years of civilization. Another example is the iPhone. So, when you look at the phone you have in your pocket, it's kind of a marvel of engineering and brilliance. And like that thing didn't look like that when they first started making the iPhone. I've got the example down here, like the iPhones that we know and love now, like they are leaps and bounds ahead of what they were at the beginning. But the only reason that they can be leaps and bounds ahead of what they were at the beginning is because they've had many, many different iterants and different variants as they've progressed. And Homo sapiens, so humans, we didn't just, come into existence one day. Well, maybe we did, depending on which religious text you ask, but that's up to you to decide. But from an evolutionary standpoint, human beings, like we've been iterated over time. If you believe the evolutionary theories, which I do, then we've evolved and we've changed. And so this is kind of the nature of evolution. Like everything that exists has gradually, changed over time to become unrecognizable to what it was at the beginning. Because if you took an iPhone 16 and you compared it to the first iPhone ever made, you wouldn't even put them in the same, they don't even look like the same product. And exactly the same premise that if you go to a zoo and you look at a monkey in a zoo and you look at yourself in the mirror, you're not going to see much resemblance. But you came from that, if that makes sense. And that iPhone came from that. And also cars, like, we started off with horses and now we've got, Teslas that can do 0 to 60 in like 2.5 seconds or something. Like that's a lot of iteration to get there. And modern medicine as well, like like tablets and pills and antibiotics, like this has all been a result of one big test. And also everything else, like,
Well, I might
everything
unplug my
else that
headset
you
really
use
quickly.
and see
It's
in the
like
modern
really
world.
tangled. Hold on.
Has been
Okay, wait. Let me make sure my. Yeah. Okay, you can still hear me. Nice.
iterated over time. So what is iteration and how does it work? Because it is an incredibly powerful process. It is the process. And you can interchange the word iteration with evolution, but it's kind of the same thing. But really, to understand and apply iteration to business, we do need to dive into evolution, which is basically the most powerful iterative process on the planet. Like evolution as a force, as like a march of nature, is the thing that drives iteration. Now, this is going to be a bit of an abstract ride, and it's not going to make sense at points, but it will, and we will come full circle, and everything will be clear in due course. So bear with me, strap yourself in, and let's get into it. So modeling evolution. So understanding evolution makes you a force to be reckoned with in business. Now, yes, I'm referring to evolution in the same way that your science teacher would. We're talking about the survival of, well, it's not actually the survival of the fittest. People don't really understand that. But in biology, in evolutionary biology, the term fitness or fittest refers to the ability to reproduce and survive. And so when we say survival of the fittest, from a proper biological standpoint, you're referring to survival of those who have the likelihood to reproduce. Fittest itself, like people think that it means like being fit and healthy. Not true, okay? Anyway, there's a little myth busting for you. So, in biology, evolution is the force that drives organisms to adapt to their environment and change, generation to generation over time. And this force is known as natural selection. So here's how natural selection works in a nutshell. So organisms of a species exist in an environment. And these organisms have different traits, and they differ slightly. So the species will, the same organisms, but they have slightly different traits. In the same way that, you're a human, and your best friend is a human, but you look different, but you kind of are the same thing. And so this is called variation. Traits are physical characteristics that are determined by genes. So you have your genetic genotype, you have your DNA, and your best friend has his or her DNA, and you share the same DNA because you're of the same species, but there's slight variations throughout that, genetic code that make you look different, and therefore you have different traits. So your friend might have blonde hair, you might have black hair, or your friend might be 6 foot tall and you might be, 5'10". Some traits are better adapted to the environment than others. And so when we have different traits among a species, some members of that species have better traits. So the example I've given here is if we've got a population of mice, and this is mice of the same species, well, some mice of this species might have the genetic code for black fur, and other mice of this species might have the genetic code for brown fur. And so the black mice in this instance with black fur have an advantage. They are better adapted to the environment because the rocks that they live on are black, and therefore they are camouflaged. And so what this means is that the brown mice, the ones with the brown fur, are more likely to be predated on, tripping over my own words here, and therefore are less likely to survive. And so we would consider the black mice more adapted. And the organisms with the better adapted traits are more likely to survive, obviously. And then the organisms that are more likely to survive are more likely to reproduce. And this is called fitness. Now, the cool thing about reproduction is that, there's a few things about it. The first thing is that the traits that enable better survival get passed down to the offspring. And so if more black mice are surviving because they're being predated on less by the bird, because they're black mice on a black rock and they're not brown, then they're going to reproduce more. More of these are going to reproduce. And what that means is we're going to get more black mice because they're going to pass on their genetic traits. And we're going to repeat this over millions of years and thousands of generations to, get the species that we know and love and familiar with today. And, so for example, the modern day elephant that you should be familiar with, whether it's in India or Africa, like they evolved from like mammoths and different families of mammoths. And over time, nature decided that the length of their trunk would be a certain length, and they'd be these massive animals that you can't even like penetrate with a bullet. Well, maybe that's not true actually, but you know what I mean? Like all of these traits that they have, like the thick skin and all of this stuff, have been evolved over time to suit the environment. And so this is kind of it in a nutshell. A population of mice have moved into a new area where the rocks are dark. Due to natural genetic variation, some are black and others are tan. Tan mice are more visible to birds than black mice and predatory birds. Therefore, tan mice are eaten at higher frequency than black mice. And only the surviving mice are obviously going to reach the reproductive age and leave offspring. And because black mice have a higher chance of leaving offspring than tan mice, the next generation contains a higher fraction of black mice than the previous generation. And this is how it works. So the environment sets the conditions for survival, and the organism must adapt itself accordingly. Now, you might notice this is kind of how I've taught you to come up with your niche and create everything so far. Like the niche and the market sets the conditions, and we must adapt ourselves to it. You cannot like create your offer and the problem and the solution around yourself and what you think is best for you. You have to do it around the market. In the same way that if you're a mouse living on a black rock, you better make sure that you've got black fur and not brown fur. You might prefer to have brown fur and be like, oh, this brown fur looks way better on me, but you're going to get eaten and die. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather not have that happen to me. So there you go. So the environment sets the conditions for survival. And variation, which is basically just a result of the random mutation of genes, creates the genotype. So at a genetic level, your DNA or the DNA of an organism randomly mutates. So during the reproductive process, you have the male and the female, however controversial that might be to say these days, you have the male and the female reproductive cells. They merge together and they fuse, and then a new genetic code is created that has a lot of affinity to its parents, but is slightly different, which is why you don't look identical to your parents, right? And so this becomes the genotype, which creates the traits. So if your mum's got blue eyes and your dad's got blue eyes, and they reproduce, and you're a result of that, then you're probably going to have blue eyes, and therefore you have the trait of blue eyes as a result of your genotype. Okay. Now you could have brown eyes, and there could be some random mutation happening, from the reproduction. So yeah, that's that. Now, traits, which are physical characteristics and sometimes can also be behaviors, create adaptability. So how adapted you are is determined solely by what traits that you have. So for example, a trait of these mice is the color of their fur. And adaptability creates fitness. So remember when we said survival of the fittest? Like it's not fittest, like it's not about which mouse has the lowest resting heart rate and is the fastest and can lift the most weight, and bench press the most. So that's a funny thought. It's about whether or not they can actually survive. Okay, like how fit are they to the environment? Do they fit the environment, basically? Fitness creates reproduction, and reproduction creates iteration. And iteration, which is basically just defined as a small change in a positive direction, creates evolution. So obviously nature doesn't recognize sentiment. Nature doesn't give a shit about the mouse, and anything. So when I say positive, I'm referring to this in the sense that we are making progress, but the only progress nature recognizes is progress itself. It doesn't care what it has to kill or take over, it's kind of ruthless like that. So that's basically the process of evolution. And, another example I can give you here are these little butterflies. So let's say we've got some butterflies of the same species. We've got the blue ones and we've got the red ones, and the blue ones are going to create more blue ones with slightly different variants of blue, and the same with the red ones. They're going to create slightly different ones, and who knows? If the blue one and the red one mated, then maybe we'd get a purple butterfly. And basically the thing about nature is we have limited resources. So all organisms in a species are fighting for limited resources, which is basically food, habitat, and mates. And so the butterflies that are better adapted will have better access to habitat, better access to food, and better access to mates to produce offspring. And therefore, the traits that are preferable to the environment will be selected for and accordingly will be passed down to their offspring. Now, to understand this in a little bit more detail, it does help to just take a quick look at DNA and what that is. So you should be familiar with the term, but DNA is essentially a biological or chemical molecule that carries genetic information for the development and functioning of an organism. Okay? It can be observed as a string of information combined together that basically codes for the organism. So in the same way that if you think about computer programming, and let's say that you want to program a game, well, you'd write tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of millions of lines of code to create that game. And it's kind of the same thing where your DNA is like a big line of code that basically is basically like a binary structure, which means that I'm not going to get into it actually, I'm not going to confuse you because you kind of understand the premise. I could talk about it for hours, but it's wonderful. But basically, it codes for you, or it codes for the organism, right? Now, it's way more complicated than that, but I don't need to complicate this too much. Now, DNA is passed from one generation to another of a species via reproduction to offspring. Now, a species is a class of organisms with the same kind of name, right? Of the same kind with the same name, rather. So, for example, we are Homo sapiens. We belong to the species Homo sapien. That's our, taxonomy. Now, organisms of a species have physical and behavioral affinity, which means they're broadly similar. So, for example, if you observe elephants, that's like a species, right? Now, organisms have DNA, and this DNA codes for traits which are physical and behavioral attributes of an organism. For example, some traits for a human being could be eye color, or height, or being born with certain diseases, or the structure of your bones. So, whether or not someone is born with a really sharp jawline or not, or whether or not someone's born with a certain metabolism, or whether or not someone's born with sickle cell disease, or whether or not someone's like 7 foot, it's going to come down to the DNA and the random mutation of that DNA during the reproductive process, okay? Now, organisms obviously reproduce to create offspring, and we can see how DNA works here. So you basically have your body. Your body's made up of like lots and lots of these little things called cells. Inside of the cell, at a very, very small level, you have these things called chromosomes, and these are basically fractal pieces of they're fractal structures that basically contain the genetic code that just creates you, and you'll have different ones for different cells. Now, during the reproductive process, the DNA of a male and female is combined and randomly mutates, as I've kind of explained. This makes the offspring similar to, but slightly different from its descendants, and this is called descent with modification. So, when a woman and a man love each other very much, together they go and things happen and sparks fly, and then a baby happens, right? And that baby will be slightly different to its parents, but it will still have similarities to its parents, and that's called descent with modification. And this is called variation, whereby all organisms of a species slightly differ. And it's really important that this happens because, the only way that evolution can work and iteration can happen and life can actually exist is if there's variation. Because what variation does is it accounts for change. So if you've got, let's just say you've got 10,000 insects or ants, I can use the ant example. If you've got 10,000 ants, you want them all to be slightly different from each other, because then you've got you've hedged 10,000 different ways. And so if the environment changes, there's 10,000 different variants that basically can be tested, and that way the species continues. If everything is the same, and we have what you'd know in farming as monoculture, or in genetics as being homogeneous, I think that's the word, where everything's the same, then one change can wipe out the entire species. And so this is basically called being anti-fragile, or a little bit more robust, where variation is just the key to evolution, because without it, one change can wipe out an entire species. And this is why we differ. This is why all humans are different. It's why all organisms, at least observable ones, are slightly different in terms of size, in terms of traits. Because if you don't, one change comes along and it's good night. So even identical twins have slight mutations that make them differ. They're not, they might look identical, but they're still going to have different things because they're not carbon copies of each other. They might sound different. They might look slightly different. So what I want you to do is, I know we're in the weird biological abstraction stage, and I promise I will bring it back to business and everything will make sense. But we need to understand this, because I'm going to bring this into business in a second and it's going to blow your mind. So what I want you to do is think of organisms as made up of components. Now, component is not a biological term used to describe what an organism is, But it's just for the sake of simplicity, let's just pretend that it is. So these components are made up of more components, and the components that make up the components are made up of even more components, which are determined by DNA. Now, that might sound a little bit confusing, so allow me the liberty of blowing your mind. Well, hopefully I can do that with some slides. Now, we're going to use the example of an ant here, and I've got a diagram of an ant. So this is an organism of the species, let's just say Morgan ant, okay? And what we can see is the ant is made up of these different components. It's got different parts of its body. It's not just this, like ant is the collective term we use to describe the aggregate of all of these components, right? So let's look at how things change and evolve from the perspective of a diagram, okay? So, okay, I'm gonna draw this point home for you. So here you can see an ant, okay, this black ant. And this is an ant belonging to the Morgan ant species, okay? It's a species of ant called the Morgan ant species. Sounds kind of cool, I know. I definitely didn't name it myself. Now, this ant exists in an environment which sets the conditions for survival and reproduction. And so, you know, you can see here, we've got this, I'm just going to zoom out slightly. Okay, so we've got the environment being the leaf, and the environment is basically setting the conditions for survival, okay? Now, the Morgan ant is made up of observable physical components. And these components are known as level 1 variables. And a variable is something that if you modify it, modifies the whole thing. And so what that means is that if you slightly modified one of these level 1 variables or components, then you would slightly modify the ant. So the ant is the macro, and it contains things. It's like a shell, you know, and then the ant is broken up into head, upper body, mid body, lower body. And so, you know, when we look at our diagram of what an ant is, we've got the head here, then we've got the, you know, the upper body, we've got the mid body, and we've got the lower body. Obviously, we've got the legs and the antenna and stuff, but I'm keeping this simple, okay? So, ants made up of components. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because these components are then also made up of components. So level 1 variables, which are the big things, are made up of level 2 variables. And these are smaller, more specific components that are basically added together under a branch to make the larger component to make the ant. Now, here's the cool thing. If you want to change the ant, you modify the level 2 variable. Because when you modify the level 2 variable, then you modify the level 1 variable, and therefore you modify the ant. And I promise I'm going somewhere with this, so just bear with me for a second. Here's where it gets even cooler. So, below level 2 variables, we have level 3 variables. And level 3 variables are basically characteristics of level 2 variables that determine how they manifest in the organism. So if you modify a level 3 variable, which is all you can modify, then you slightly modify the level 2 variable, and then for the level 1 variable, and therefore the ant. So the way that things change and the way that iteration and evolution happens, naturally speaking, is on a very small level. So for example, if I said to you, you know, let's change, like I want to evolve this ant and I want to change the way that its head looks. It's like, well, which part of its head are you going to change? Oh, I know, I want to change the eyes. Well, what about the eyes are you going to change? Oh, I'm going to change the width. So whenever we want to make a change anywhere, we have to bring it back to the smallest things possible and understand the relationship between those small things, the things that they make up, the things that those things make up, and so on and so forth. And evolution doesn't, like an ant's head doesn't just change color. Like a specific part will, and this is such a simplistic, reductionistic understanding of how an ant works. I looked into the anatomy of an ant for about 3 days to figure this thing out for you. Trust me, it was not fun. And it's way more complex than this, but there's literally thousands of these little level 3 variables that can be changed at a tiny little molecular level to change the ant, but I can't really fit that on a diagram, and I'm sure you're not that interested, so we're keeping it simple. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. DNA, right? DNA contains the genetic information that contains the code for the level 3 variables. And different parts of the DNA chain code for different level 3 variables. All organisms of the same species have similar DNA, but slight variations, meaning no organism has totally identical level 3 variable combinations, but they'll be quite similar. So in case you hadn't been able to sort of gather by now, level 3 variables that we can see here are essentially the traits. Okay, they are the traits of the components of the organism. And the DNA is the genetic information, and different parts of the DNA, as dictated or demonstrated here by these sort of like little branch node models, different parts of the genetic code for different traits in different level 3 variables. And so, for example, if we changed this part of the DNA here, like right here, then we might be changing the size of the ant's coxa, which is this part of its mid-body here. And you change the ant ever so slightly. And so what we've got on the right-hand side here is a diagram to demonstrate this. So the DNA codes for the level 3 variables and makes up the level 3 variables. Okay? So the shape of the eyes of the ant is determined by an ever so slight shift in the DNA of the information, or the information DNA. And the level 3 variables, they kind of make up the level 2 variables, and the level 2 variables, well, they make up the level 1 variables. And if we combine all the level 1 variables, then we get the organism as we know it. And so things are shells. You know when you hear about like shell companies, and I'm not talking about the energy company, I'm talking about like these big holding companies. So like, for example, in economics, we've got a company called BlackRock, one of the most famous companies. BlackRock owns BlackRock owns basically everything. So it owns all of these big companies, and all these big companies own all these brands, and all these brands own these subsidiaries, and all these subsidiaries own more subsidiaries. And so it's kind of like a shell structure in the sense that we have the big thing that contains the little things, that contains smaller things, that contains smaller things. This is called macro and micro thinking. And the reason I'm demonstrating this from the perspective of an ant is because when I bring this in and translate it to business, it will just click for you like that, because you've already seen it from a way more understandable perspective. And so the cool thing is that, if we want to change an ant, then what we need to do is we need to introduce something called variance or variation. And so there are infinite numbers, really. Well, maybe it's not infinite exactly, but philosophically speaking, it's pretty infinite, right? There are an infinite amount of DNA variants and combinations that could mutate into an organism's genetic code to change the way that these variables appear at the level 3 level. And so this is kind of cool because, the variants that you can see at the bottom here, they are endless. And so, this ant can be slightly tweaked just on such a small level, something as small as eye shape, or something as small as, an ever so slight shift in the color of its antenna. And according to that shift and that slight mutation and variation, it could become slightly more adaptable, and that genetic code could be passed on to offspring. And this is how it works, right? Now, let me just throw a bit of a spanner in the works here. So what you can see in the top right is the leaf color has changed. So we've gone from a brown leaf to a yellow leaf. And what this now means is that the environment has changed. And, environments like to do this. Those bloody pesky things, boy, do they like to change. And so the environment's changed. We've gone from brown leaf to yellow leaf. And so, for example, let's say that the environment that this ant lives in is, on a tree, and a nearby farm pollutes the river that usually would provide the water for the tree. And, the pollution mutates the genetic code of the tree, which turns or bleaches its leaves and turns its leaves yellow. And so the ant now finds itself on yellow leaves, right? Now, here's where it gets kind of cool. So let's say that one specific ant of the Morgan ant species is born, or hatched, because I think they come out of eggs, right? They're not mammals, with a slight mutation. So in this new ant's genetic code is an ever so slight mutation that gives assent to a more yellowish lower body. Just slightly. It's not going to be a huge change because it's only like one variation. But let's say that there's a random mutation, okay, at this level. And what this does is this changes the color code, or the color of the postpetiole, which is the bulbous part of the lower body of the ant, and making it yellow. And therefore we have a version 2 of part of the lower body. And therefore we have a version 2 of the lower body. And what that means is that this ant is now going to appear physically different from the rest of the ants. It's less likely to be predated upon due to the fact that it's now more camouflaged on the new leaf color. And what this means is that this yellow lower body, this sort of version 2 of the Morgan ant, is now better adapted ever so slightly to the new change in environment. And what this means is that this ant has a better chance of survival because it's less likely to be eaten by birds, or it's less likely to be, predated on because of the camouflage. Therefore, it has a higher chance of, passing on its genetic code to the queen ant, or however the hell those things work, right? And, therefore a new version emerges. And before you know it, after plenty of reproduction and, generations, this trait will spread throughout the entire species because it's preferable and it's better adapted, okay? And so this is an example of how organisms change. It's the case where the environment changes, we get a random mutation, it changes one small part, which changes a part of that part, which changes a part of that part of that part, therefore the entire thing, okay? And this is how adaptation works. Now, let's say that we've now got version 2 of this ant with a slightly, yellow lower body. And let's say that there's another random mutation, this time in the DNA code for the color of the antenna, okay? So another pretty small component, right? Now, what's going to happen if there's another random mutation here is, we're going to get a different color of antenna. Okay, so now we've got version 2 of the color under the antenna, which means we've got version 2 of the antenna, which means we've got a brand new head version. So like, it's kind of like, how games get updated and it's like, we've got a new head update. It's kind of how this thing works, right? And what this does is now we've got yellow antenna as opposed to black antenna, you can see here. And this now creates version 3 of the Morgan ant. And so slowly over time, through this random mutation and through these small changes up through the chain of, this macro structure, we get change. And we get new variants and we get new versions and good things happen. Now, let me just pull this up, okay? So this is how all organisms have come to be. And it's called iteration. Now, it's natural selection, it's evolution, but ultimately, this is iteration. It's where we go from one version to the next version in a way that is positive in sentiment, where we're making progress. This is a gradual, slow change in a positive direction. Every single organism that you observe in the natural world is the result of millions of years of iteration, just like that example I gave you. And what's cooler is that this is still going on right now. You can't observe it because in your lifetime, we're not even going to change at all. Maybe we'll get, there's a theory for human beings that states that we are going to be natural. There's a theory for human beings that height is going to be naturally selected for, and in if we survive this long, in tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years to come, which is would be a pretty interesting thing. The idea is that it's going to be easier for us to survive and reproduce if we're taller, because as the planet heats up, if with the climate change thing, if that happens, then it's going to be easier for us to disperse heat through our bodies if we're taller. And so what some scientists think we're going to observe naturally over the course of lots and lots of generations throughout humans is humans are gradually going to get taller and taller and taller.
I thought we were talking about women, they want a tall guy. Shit, I didn't know if that had science behind it. My bad.
Because that's more preferable to heat dispersion. Now, whether we believe that or not is up to discussion, but you get the point, right? The environment changes, accordingly we must change with it. And so this is how everything's come to be. If you look out your window right now and you see a tree, you should probably salute that tree, because that's the perfect tree for the environment that it's in. It's been mutated and changed over and over again, and it's the same thing with any animal that you see, okay? Now, this is where this kind of diagram demonstrates this point pretty well, because you can see we've gone here we've gone from the Morgan ant to a brand new species, basically. And as a species, when it becomes completely unrecognizable or significantly unrecognizable from its previous descendant, it becomes a new species. In the same way that we've gradually evolved from before Homo sapiens, we had a taxonomic. Well, our taxonomy before was Homo erectus, which I know sounds a little bit comical, but Homo erectus was basically the pre-Homo sapien, one of the pre-Homo sapien stages that basically determined monkey standing on hind legs. And Homo erectus was one of the first organisms to have something called bipedal locomotion, which bipedal
What organism are you? Homo erectus. How about you, bro?
Locomotion was a trait that basically stated that monkey can stand on two legs, and monkey can nearly run, and monkey can walk on two legs. And this gave us access to our arms, and therefore we could start to stand up, and then we could start using tools, and our brains would develop to use these tools, and that's how the brain adapted. And so the point is that we are Homo sapiens. However, we evolved from Homo erectus, but we got to a point in our evolutionary history where we looked so different, and we had such different traits from Homo erectus that we classified ourselves as a different species. Now, species classification is an abstraction, which means that it is not really real. We've just named it, right? But still, the principle applies here. And so if we applied, hundreds of thousands of years to the Morgan ant, we'd get something that looks completely different. And the reason we get something that looks completely different is because over the course of hundreds of thousands of years, the environment won't be the same. The only constant is change. The environment's not going to be static, it's going to change. So if you apply enough time and enough mutation and therefore enough iteration, an entirely new species can emerge. Okay, so like I said earlier, with the iPhone 16, it's almost like a different phone to the original iPhone. It's got some affinity, but goddamn. Like, for example, the iPad is similar to the iPhone, but it looks different, and therefore it's called an iPad, not an iPhone. In the same way that a MacBook is not the same as a Mac. Like, they're made by the same company and they run on the same operating software, but they look so different that Apple have to, separate them in name, right? And so, that's kind of an explanation. So, as the environment changes over hundreds of thousands of years, the organisms, it might not be hundreds of thousands, could be tens of thousands or just thousands, but the organisms continue to adapt, and before you know it, you have something brand new that's not recognizable to its ancestor. And so what we can see here, for the Morgan ant, this would no longer be the Morgan ant species, but this could be version 373,248. Now, that's a bit extreme, but my point here is that all of this DNA is going to change, and we're going to get different variants of length, toxicity here, color changes 3 times, and this is what happens when you times all these experiments together, because we've got the head has gone through 48 variations, the upper body has gone through 24 variations, the mid body has gone through 18 variations, and the lower body has gone through 18 variations. And, if you times all these together, you should get this number. I think that doesn't look right, but I think that's right. Maybe it's not, but you get the point, right? If you times 4 by 6 by 2, we get 48. And so if we go through 4 variations of eyes, 6 variations of an antenna, and 2 variations of pincer, then we've been through 48 different iterations of head component, right? And the head component contributes to the ant, and if you put all these things together, then you get this variant of the ant. And so what we can start doing, and what we can learn to do, is placing this sort of version thing next to everything. And so everything has a version, and the version depends on how many experiments or tests have been run, or how many iterations have actually been completed. And so this might be version 3, where we've got a slightly different color of body and a slightly different, type of antenna, different color of antenna. But this could be version 300,000, where now we've got 70 legs, we've got pincers on the back, and we've got brown spots, and now we're releasing toxic chemicals and killing spiders, and the thing just completely changes. And so nature shuffles one variable at a time over a very long period of time to find the organism that is as near perfect as possible to the environment and its conditions. And natural selection and evolution iteration, these are beautiful ideas. In case you can't tell, I get a little bit passionate when I talk about them. I think they're fucking awesome. And if you understand this, and if you really get this, and you really get to grips with this, it makes you an absolute weapon and force to be reckoned with in business. Because, well, I can explain. I'll give you some understanding. Okay. So that's basically the biology lesson in a nutshell. There's going to be a little bit more we have to discuss, but you need to understand this, because now we're going to talk about how to actually apply this. So, applied evolutionary biology. So now that you have a basic understanding of evolution, we can actually put it to some use. So we've gone through the wax on, wax off, and now I'm going to tell you to show me how to paint the fence, and you're going to block a kick or something, right? So you need to learn to see your business as a living organism with DNA, traits, variation, etc., etc. So when you look at business, you need to see it in the same way that you'd see a biological structure. So what I mean by this is, when we refer to environment in business, this is the market. So your niche, your competitors. The market is basically the sum of every individual human interaction. at every level, competitors, customers, etc. Right? And so when we look at the market, well, really you exist in an environment in the same way that an ant exists on a tree. If the tree changes and it changes color, the ant must too change color, otherwise it will die. In the same way that you exist in a market.
Bro, I'm stressing out. Okay, this might sound really petty, but bro, I'm just looking at my. Is it your index finger? The finger next to your phone. I think the finger next to your. I can't be able to search up. The finger next to your thumb. I think it's your index finger, bro. Why is mine like wonky for? Let me take up my. Yeah, bro, that shit is definitely wonky. Like genuinely, it is. Bro, what is up with that? Have I fucked up? Ow! How do I? How do I knock it back into place so it's straight? Yeah, this is bitch is flipping not straight. What is up with that? Oh, I need to stop whining, bro. At least I have fingers, okay? Some people probably don't have hands, okay? Let's stop complaining. Bro, I was scared for a sec that like all this like flipping card shit. I mean, like it's kind of a mistake me making paper flowers or anything to do with origami out of flipping card. It's so hard to like bend and shit. Not bend, but fold. You know what I mean? They have to crease everything like 20 times. Oh, we're getting there though. We are most certainly getting there. Shit better be worth it. I'm joking. I'm doing this out of the love of the game, out of the love of the heart. Okay. I don't expect anything to. I don't expect any gifts in return, but hey. I really should invest in a webcam as well sometime. I mean, I'm not really too fussed with showing my face on YouTube or anything really, but I feel like it could be cool. Yeah. I'm just looking at the one that I made earlier. I mean, I've made like one complete one, and like I'm doing all the rest in like little steps. So like they all kind of look like this at the moment, bottom, this kind of thing. They're not like I haven't folded them out to be like flowers yet. Because like every single one of these like one, two, three things, these are three different parts of a flower. I have to make each one of them. So everything just looks like kind of folded up diamonds at the moment until you open them up. Then you just glue them all onto the stick. But yeah, man. I mean, I feel like this photo doesn't do them justice. I feel like they definitely look really cool in person. And also, I have like three types of different color card as well, so it's all like kind of pinkish colors, right? But there's like a more like a skin tone one. Then there's like a. It's all like, yeah. I could show you, but like, yeah, it's just different like types of pink card. But yeah, it just takes a while to do. I kind of a lie. But yeah. Oh shit! I didn't even make a hole in this one. Uh oh. Let me chop a hole in this really quick. values. Program this. Okay. Okay. Let's get to more forwarding. Okay. Bruh. 45 minutes, 46.
Market. And if that market changes, you must adapt and change accordingly. And, you know, in biology, we have this term variation, which is used to denote the, well, basically variety and having the variety to be, you know, anti-fragile. And in business, this is new ideas, new tests, you know, new things, new experiments, right? Genotype, DNA. This is the information used to create all of the variables in your business. So when you're creating your business and when you're creating your offer and your avatar and your, you know, cold email systems and your sales scripts and your products, like you're using information to do that. You're coding your business in essence. And so when you go through the offer training and, you know, I've given you all of the components of an offer, you know, you're using your understanding of your market and and me and, you know, and this program to code for an offer. And you're coding for a trait. So an offer in your business is like a trait, and that trait is going to be tested against the market and the environment. And if it's a good trait, if it's, you know, if it actually works, then the market's going to respond accordingly. You're going to get customers, and that way you know that the genetic code of your business, this information you use to code the offer, is accurate and appropriate. And we're going to talk more about that in a second. Now, the traits are the characteristics of your business. So for example, if you have a great product, then that means that you've got a good trait. And so, for example, you know, the Imperium Academy here with this program, in this academy, maybe it sucks. I don't know. I hope it doesn't suck, right? But I think with a bit of luck, this is a great product, right? And the only reason it's a great product is because I have access to the information to make it. So the DNA of this product is my decade-long experience making money online and teaching thousands of people to do it and doing it myself. And so, you know, I can code for a pretty damn good trait here. Now, another trait you could have is bad customer support. So if you don't have the information available to you on how to accurately and properly support your customers, then you're going to code for bad support. And one of the traits of your business would be bad support. And so the way that we fix all of the problems in business is by, as I mentioned earlier on in previous videos, seeking out critical information and finding information that's appropriate and, you know, coding that into your business and seeing that code manifest as a trait, testing that trait and therefore evolving, okay? In the same way that, you know, if an ant had the ability to, you know, actually look at the leaf, you know, if the ant was like, oh shit, you know, this leaf is now yellow, I'm just going to quickly change to being yellow. Like if it could do that, then, you know, it would evolve way faster and ants would probably take over the world. And this is exactly why humans have taken over the world. And it's exactly why we are the top dogs and we are the most prevalent species and we are at the top of the food chain in every way, is because we have consciousness and we have the ability to change like that. We have the ability to mold and adapt ourselves by using our brains and our consciousness. And that makes us, and we can't do that on a biological level. You know, if there's a radioactive fallout and we have a nuclear winter, I can't just go into, well, maybe we can eventually, but I can't at the moment just go into my genetic code and code for, you know, nuclear resistance. Like, but what I can do is I can look at my business and I can use my brain and my conscious mind to seek information to find new variants that I think would be appropriate and adaptable to the environment. Like, when you get this idea, you just fucking get it. And like, it will change the way you look at business and it will make you so much money. Okay. So anyway, so adaptability is your business fitting the market better and having traits that make it grow. Fitness is your business actually making money and being profitable. So, you know, in biological terms, fitness refers to an organism actually having the ability to, you know, reproduce and having the right traits. But in business, it's like, are we actually making money? And then reproduction, this actually happens in business. So this is other businesses copying your business traits. So by watching this video and by going through this program, like, I am essentially like reproducing, like your business is going to be offspring of my ideas. And that's fine and that's appropriate. And you want that to happen because I've tested my ideas and I've tested my business traits and the way that I think about business, and I've made it work. And I've made nearly $30 million at this point with these ideas. And so what I'm doing is you can now copy those traits and put them into your business in exactly the same way that an organism would sort of reproduce and, you know, come together and pass down to its offspring. So your business is sort of offspring of mine, and you're going to go and find new things that work, and then people are going to copy you. And this is how, you know, we see this evolution over time. And so iteration is the gradual change of your business over time in a positive direction. And this is basically evolution. And my business has been through thousands of iterations to get to the point where, you know, I can make, you know, $1 million a month. Well, actually it's kind of more at this point as of me recording this, and have, you know, these 50, 60% profit margins, and, you know, basically just make an obscene amount of money at a young age. Like, it's just, I've just iterated thousands of times, and now I've found a sort of organism or a type of species that's just so perfectly adapted to the environment that it's ridiculous. And sometimes I have to pinch myself, but I'm sharing that with you. So in the same way that a species would develop and organisms would survive via natural selection, the same thing is true in business with business variables. So you know how we talked about this with the black mice and the tan mice? Well, it's kind of the same thing. Like, the market selects, right? So the business exists in a market. All businesses have different traits, like different products, different marketing, different teams, different cultures. And traits are characteristics of the business which are determined by the available information that the founder has, which is why the quality of your business is determined by the quality of information you have available to you. And some traits are better adapted to the market than others. So for example, if I have a better product than you, then I'm better adapted to the market than you, because that's a trait that the market's going to reward. And the businesses with the better adapted traits are more likely to survive, which basically means they actually make profit, and, you know, the founder doesn't quit. And the businesses that are more likely to profit are more likely to be copied or emulated. And the traits from these successful businesses get passed down to new businesses, and then these new businesses are going to slightly vary on the ones prior to them, and then they're going to repeat. And so this is how natural selection works in business. And this is how we get these really unique and super powerful business models that come out of, you know, seemingly nowhere, but typically have taken, you know, decades to sort of develop. And, you know, this is kind of what happened with dropshipping. This is what happened with consulting. This is what's happening with school at the moment. Pretty interesting. And if you don't believe me, well, that's literally the process underpinning this entire program. Like, you know, this program is about to unleash a massive evolutionary wave of how to run this sort of online consulting business, this lean, hungry, mean, like, you know, 6 or 7 figure consulting business. And I'm literally doing this. I'm forcing natural selection into the market with this, and the market's gonna reward me over and over again accordingly. So here's where this gets interesting, because now you might be thinking, Charlie, just get to the point. So So let's now visualize how a consulting business evolves. So in the same way that an ant, with this PDF that you can click on here, that in the same way that we can see what an ant is made up of and how this thing would evolve over time, we can do the exact same thing with business. So if I just pull these slides up here, Okay, and we come up here. So in the same way, you kind of recognize this diagram, right? So just like an organism, a business, version 1, exists in an environment which sets the conditions for survival. Now, the two primary conditions of the environment that you find yourself in are your niche and the problem that you're solving for your niche. And these are always present and always changing, right? So the problem might ever so slightly shift, or the niche might change. Not in the sense that, you're changing the problem or you're changing the niche, but the needs of the niche are going to shift, and you're going to have to adapt. And so in the same way that an ant exists on a tree, a business exists in an environment, and the environment sets the conditions for survival. Now here's where it gets kind of cool. So just like an organism, a business is made up of components. Business as a term, or that's my business.
Bro, I fucked up this one so bad. Oh, this is whatever. I have to admit, this is like probably the worst one I've done so far. I think I should do a little update pic of all my little soon-to-be flowers. Okay. Let me put it in my Discord really quick. Okay, so here's what we're looking like at the moment. Okay, here are all of my some are glued. Like, see, this is the annoying bit. See, these ones aren't glued. Like this one isn't, this one isn't, that one's not. Some of them are, like this one is, this one is. But see, these flaps all need to get glued down. But I don't know what it looks like on like in this photo. But these flaps like like a centimeter long, and it's just you have to open each one up, and like it's such a pain. But yeah, but that's what one. So this is like what it opens up into, and then like, I mean, it looks a bit weird. It just looks like a kind of like a square on the side, but it does look good, I swear. But each one of these must take like 10 minutes each. With maybe a bit more actually with the gluing. I don't know. Should I time it? Just for shits and giggles, really, really quick. Time my next one. Let me move all of these other way really quick. Alright, let's time it really quickly. Let's time it without the gluing. Okay, I'm not gonna speed run it or anything. I'm just gonna do like normalish pace. So okay, 3, 2, 1, and I'm starting like wait. Let me last photo. I swear. Hold up. I'll show you what I'm starting off with. Okay, this is just like, oh shit, I didn't send it. That's what I'm starting off with. It's a 10 by 10 like square. But yeah, all right, let's do it. Let's go. Remember, I'm not trying to speedrun it or anything. Just looking for a good quality little flower, or inside of a flower. Obviously, I'm gonna add more layers to it, like I showed you. But yeah. Okay, folds are looking clean on this one, can't lie. They're looking nice, they're looking nice. It's been 30 seconds already though. 40, okay. I'm saying like 5 minutes maybe this would take me. Maybe I overestimated by saying 10. But still. This is without the gluing as well, by the way. Okay, folds are looking decent-ish. It's just getting everything level. Like you'll find like if anyone has any experience doing this, or if anyone, I don't expect anyone to be watching the stream at the moment, by the way, but if anyone does one day come across it, I mean, you'll find that making these paper flower things, it's like if your foundations aren't right, if your what's it called? If your like 10 by 10 square is like maybe it's like one side's like a little bit longer and it's not like an actual like symmetrical square, like even that like it messes over the entire thing. That's Loki applying to business as well. Don't Obviously I don't know a lot about business yet, but I kind of see the relation. Okay, getting your foundations right. It's it's probably the most important thing, like ever. Like fuck yeah, literally ever. I mean, I don't know if I'm talking out my ass right now, but just thinking of scenarios where like having a good foundation is just you need it when building a house. You it is required to have a solid foundation. If you don't, the house is gonna fall apart. If you Yeah, that is literally like how shit goes in business. If you don't have a if you build your business without knowing the foundations to business, then like where do you expect it to go? And like shit, maybe if it does go somewhere, I mean, I wouldn't expect it to go very far. And for some reason, even if it does go far, I don't think it would last. Okay, there's a reason why everyone starts with a foundation. It's probably because it's one of the most important. Also, I didn't even realize I'm actually doing this pretty quickly. I'm like literally about to be done. I think I definitely do this under 4 minutes. No, wait, maybe actually. Yeah, I actually can. Wait, give me a second. W. Pause that shit right there. Okie dokie. Well, I know it doesn't look. I'll show you what I've literally just done in the span of 3 minutes and 52 seconds. But it just kind of looks like a folded up R piece of card, but it does like spread out, and you do glue these sides, and then it does turn out to be something pretty nice. But yeah, that's literally it. I mean, that's pretty good actually. So then, oh, I can't do maths, can I? Well, I can, but I'm a bit lazy. 352. Say I make like 10. Oh wait, no, it's just gonna be like 35 minutes, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I feel like I don't know. I feel like I've this is like taken a lot longer than 3 minutes, but that could just be me. I am down to my last piece of card, and then now we can start with a little bit more fun stuff. Like so, this is like the smallest bit of it. So this is the middle the inner bit, like this bit right here, and then you make bigger ones. But I made like these are all the smallest bits, but trust I'm doing it gradually. Like I'm not making one whole flower and then like making a whole nother flower. I'm just doing all the smaller bits, then putting them on all the sticks, then start with all the middle bits, and then yeah, it would build its way up. But yeah, I mean technically, if this is my last piece of card for like the middle bits, then I'm like technically 1/3 of the way then, right? Because that means I've done all of the middle, not middle, all of the inner bit. Like the smallest bit in the middle I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, 1, 2, 3, yeah, 1/3 of the way. Nice. But 50 minutes, and how long have we been streaming for? An hour now. We're getting there. Can I play oh my god, I can. Oh wait, oh I can. Wait, no I can't. Hell yeah. I might give myself a game of 8-ball pool after this. Maybe.
If you point to something, you're pointing to a selection of components. Like the business is like a term that we use to tidily aggregate different systems together. Like a business doesn't really exist. It's just a word we use to bring some order to the chaos that is this string of components. And so a business is made up of components, and these components are foundations or macro systems, okay? They are known as level 1 variables. And really in your company, and I've actually mapped these out for you, these are the main components. So you have your avatar, right? Which is basically, your understanding of your niche and fleshing that thing out. And you have your offer, which is what you're actually offering to people. Then you have your outbound process, which basically refers to how you get customers using outbound methods like cold email, cold calling, or cold DM. And don't worry, you haven't done the training on this yet, so you don't need to worry about this, but you're going to have an outbound process. Then you have your content process, which is, making like the process you have for creating content to get leads through inbound systems like YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or Facebook groups. And once again, I'm going to show you how to do this, so don't worry, but you're going to have it. Then you have your sales process. Then you have your solution, and then you have your personal identity. So your personal identity is a huge one because that's a huge component of your business. Like you are the business. And so you have who you are right now, and you're probably going to have to change. And we're going to talk about this in the mindset module coming up soon. So don't worry about that. But same thing with your solution and your sales process. Like these are the components of your business. Now, as your business grows, you're going to add more components. Like for example, my business has probably got double these components because now I've got to think about like legal departments, and then I've got like sales management, and I've got incentive systems. So for the sake of keeping it simple and the sort of 6 or 7 figure level, these are the components you're going to have, right? You can also add team and stuff in here as well, but you get it, right? There's more components to an ant than just like a few, but I only put a few in because I didn't want to confuse you. So business, macro, components, micro. These are level 1 variables. And if you combine all of these variables together, we get the business. And so version 1 plus 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 version 1 equals business version 1. Now, here's where it gets kind of cool. These level 1 variables are made up of smaller variables. And these smaller variables are known as level 2 variables. So for example, your sales process that we can see here is made up of the script, the pre-call process, and your objection handling process. So when you're selling people, you need to have a script, you need to know what to do before the call to get them to show up, and you need to know what to do when they start having objections. And so if we want to understand how do we change the sales process, well then we either change the script, the pre-calls process, or the objection process. And so if we have a problem with sales, and sales is not working for us in our business, you don't just say, I'm going to change the sales process. You get specific. You say specifically which part of this sales process is broken. Because you might have the best script in the world, and you might be the best in the world at objection handling, but if your pre-call process sucks and no one's showing up, then, well, you're not going to make any sales. And so you're not just going to go and change your sales process, you're going to change a specific part of it, if that makes sense. And so please note that you can see on the screen these level 2 variables here. There is a lot more than this. There's hundreds of them that you can change in your business. There's hundreds of different little components that you can change. But I've only included a few just to keep it simple. And so, for example, what we can see here is version 1 of your offer, or your offer is made up of your price, the time frame of the delivery, the outcome you're delivering, the methodology you use, the risk reversal process you use, the spin you use, the model you use, and then risk reversal is going to be made up of different things. So like, what sort of risk reversal are you using? Like, how are you framing it? How are you spinning it, right? So all of these level 2 variables, if we come on and move on here, contain level 3 variables. Now, I couldn't fit them on the screen here, and there's tons of these. I've just given some small examples. So for example, like in your avatar, you might have a level 2 variable.
Holy, I have done the last, like, not the last, but yeah, the first stage of it. But now I have to glue all of them, but I think we're in need of a game of 8-ball pool. Uh, yeah. I mean, I've only started playing this game like, what, maybe like a month ago, so I'm pretty bums, I can't even lie. Alright, what bit are we at? Yeah, I'm at Tokyo. I can't even play it. I don't have enough. Entry fee 2,500. Okay. Let's try win a game of Lisbon, man. I'm probably getting flamed right now for being only being on Lisbon, but I really haven't played this game for very long. I quite like it though. It's quite fun. Will it help be an actual IRL game of pool? No, but is it a fun little game to play to pass time? Well, yeah. But yeah. Let's go. Okie dokie, we're doing kind of well. Oh, I can't even hit anything, I don't think. Can I? Nope, I actually can't. Oh my god, I can. No way. W. Oh, I was so close. Oh, I got 4 balls left to put in. Is this guy stupid? Oh my god, he is. No! He potted one of mine. Oh my god. Is it potted? I don't know how you say it. Potted or put? I don't know. Let's go. This guy, you just said good game. Nice. I'm cooking this kid up. Like low key. No. Flip. Oh well. I don't know what this guy's doing. There's like so many easier balls that he could like go for, but He's just trying to give him his like AIDS one. Oh my god, this guy's really not. Mm, look at that. Let's go. Yes! W. I won. Nice. You win. Oh, did I just unlock a new place? I better. Oh, no, never mind, I didn't. How do I get onto my mission thing? I was just on it. What am I doing? Missions. There you go. Bro. Why? I have so many pop-ups in Ablepool. I don't know why. Like, it just makes me want to buy things. Like, get off my screen. Okay. Oh. Bro, please stop offering the pool pass every single time I click. Just rage bait at this point. Leave me alone. Okay, nice. Oh, I have 4.5 now. I'm gonna try Tokyo. Prize is 5,000, but entry fee is 2,500. I'm gonna go for it. One more game. Please don't lose this. Please don't lose this. Okay. Okay, he potted a solid. Okay, I'm stripes. This guy's. Hmm. Yeah, you can already tell this guy's like actually pretty good. Like that. Oh no! He almost potted for white. This guy's like already got 4 balls down. I haven't even had a good go yet. Oh, nope. Bro, please. What is this guy trying to do? I don't understand. Oh, no, man. Yes. He ran out of time. Nice. Okay. Why did I do that? flip's sake. Nah, he's got that, yeah. He didn't! Oh my god, this guy. He's a brick. This guy's not okay. What do I even go for? There's not much I can go for. I feel like I just smash these and hope for the best. Yeah, nice. I actually got one. Nice. Fuck! No. No, this is bad. I just put one of his in. Damn, man. Aww. Okay, nice. It's not all over yet. Oh my lord. Okay. Oh my days, I've just locked in so hard. I just got such a lucky shot. I just got two in one. Hell yeah. Okay, wait, I'm doing something. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing something. Okay. No! Oh, I just missed the. Oh, it was down to one ball as well. Jeez. Yeah, he's got that, I think. He's won. Please miss. Please miss. Please. He missed. He missed. He missed! Holy. Yes. We're back in. Nice. What am I calling? This one? Please go in. No! It's GG's. Yeah, he can't like miss that, can he? Nah, he's got it. Yeah, GG. Fuck. Oh, well played. Oh, that's bad. I could have won that as well. That's the most annoying part. Okie dokie. I guess let's go back to flipping Guess we're going back to sticking again, but it has to get done, so you know. Mm. Hold up, be back in 2 secs. ¿Ya ves ahora? Hello guys. Don't worry, I just did 30 press-ups. I mean, definitely done more, but I did like chest the other day. A little bit worn out, but oh shit, yeah, I forgot about that. What was it? Oh yeah. Well, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. I mean, I just got off the phone with my friend as well. We were just talking for a little bit, but it is time to get gluing, which is like a really pain in the ass. But I can't tell. I mean, what do I do? Do I look at electric go-kart videos? Or do I carry on with Charlie Morgan's thing? It can wait. It can wait. Who better really want to? Oh, fuck it. Carry on with Charlie.
Of what role models people have, and you could have level 3 variables around like different types of role models and what these look like. But to keep it simple, level 2 variables are made up of smaller level 3 variables. Some level 2 variables don't have variables inside them, but most do. So for example, a cold email, if we look here, we've got the outbound process, and part of the outbound process might be cold email. And cold email might be made up of the body copy, so the actual email that we send, the subject line of the email that we send, the deliverability. So if we're actually getting to the inbox, this is a whole thing. We'll talk about this in the cold email module, so don't worry. The lead source, so where you're getting the emails from, what software you use to send, what scheduling software you use, all of these little variables, contribute to the cold email, which contributes to the outbound process, which contributes to the business. And so this is the thing, is for your business to run successfully, all you have to do is get all of these little things right. And the way that you do that is by testing and experimenting. And so when we take another look at the ant and how this thing works, like this, for example, you can see the parallel. So we've got the organism, we've got the components, we've got the mini components, and we've got the variables of those components. And so if we want to change the ant, we drill down to specifically what we want to change, make a slight variation, and that changes the whole thing. And if we do enough of that, we get a brand new ant. And exactly the same thing is true in business. So, people think that building a business and becoming successful and getting rich in business is about making these huge, massive changes in decisions. It's not. It's just about making thousands and thousands of tiny right decisions every day and changing ever so tiny variables, and you'll smash it. And it can really just hinge on one thing. Let's say that in my business that I'm getting all of my traffic, all of my appointments from cold email. And let's say that I have got the best body copy, the best subject line, I've got the best lead sourcing, I've got the best software, but the only thing that I'm struggling with is actually delivering emails to the inbox. Let's say that my emails just aren't sending properly. I can have everything else in my business working. I can have the avatar perfect, the offer can be perfect, the content can be perfect, the sales process can be perfect, I can have the best product, I can be the best entrepreneur. But if one small little component isn't working, it's done. It's the same thing with a complex machine, like a car. If a car breaks down, it might just be because one small little nut or bolt came out. And business really is this simple and this straightforward. And so what we can do, in the same way that we looked at the ant and the organism and the DNA, is we can extrapolate that understanding back into business. And so we can sort of understand that your business has DNA, it has genetic information, in the sense that when you're making a decision to change a level 3 variable, one of these small things, the way you make that decision is based upon the information that you have available. And so if you're going to make a change at a small level in your business to change something big, you need to do it when you've got the right information. So coming back to the example of me making sure my emails are delivering properly, if I don't know, for example, with email deliverability, if you include lots of spam words in your emails, like free or 100% off or guarantee, if you use lots of spam words, then your emails will not deliver to the inbox. And so that is a piece of information that I know. And so when I'm modifying my deliverability variable for my business, I'm going to use that information accordingly. And that's what I mean when I say that the information codes for the business. You use information, which is basically your understanding of the way that the way the world works, or the way that this specific discipline that you're trying to change works. And then you code. You use the information, you say, okay, in my email for deliverability, I'm not going to use these words because I have the information that tells me that if I do that, I'm not going to deliver properly. The same thing is true with objections. When you're coming up, like for example, if we look at the objection version 1, we've got everything down to like rebuttals. If I'm writing my rebuttals for my objection handling, and I'm basically, a rebuttal is like, if someone says I want to think about it, you need to have a way to handle that on the sales call so you can get them closed. Otherwise they won't buy. And so when you're drafting up, your rebuttal process, a piece of information that helps there is understanding that before you introduce a rebuttal and tell them that they shouldn't think about it, you need to demonstrate that you understand and you have empathy. Because in order for us to change someone's mind, it helps if they feel understood to begin with. That's a piece of knowledge. That's a piece of information that we can use to code the way that we do rebuttals. Okay? And so it is literally information. The core of your business is information. So, for example, I've given you these examples here, right? But this is how it works. This is why if you just nail the information and you get really fucking good at finding good information and being right, and then integrating that information into your business, you change the small thing, which changes something slightly bigger, and then eventually you have a brand new business, okay? And it all comes around information. Basically, it's just be smart. So to change our business, we must seek critical information and apply it. Now, like I said earlier, unlike an ant, we don't have to rely on random mutation or variation for this. We can use our brains and our consciousness to find and apply the right information. If your objection handling variant in your business sucks and isn't working, i.e. you're getting loads of sales calls but closing no deals, then you can go and buy objection handling courses. Like we've got in Easy Grow, for example, we've got like an entire section dedicated purely to this. Or you can go on YouTube, or you can buy books, and you can start to seek information that you can use to then recode your objection handling variable to create a version 2 of that is more likely to be adapted to the environment. And so you can see these critical information variants demonstrated in the bottom of this diagram, where it is kind of like DNA. And so what we can start to do is, let's say, for example, that you've gone online and, let's say that you're on YouTube and you watch a video about how to structure your sales pitch, right? And you find it like a video from a really good salesperson on how to do something, a specific part of your sales pitch. Well, what you would do is you would take that information from that YouTube video and you would apply it to your business. And so you change the code of your business slightly, where now you make an amendment to your sales process or your sales script at a very specific point because of this information. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to the market with this sales process, with the new variation, and you're going to test it. And you're going to do more sales calls, and you're going to see, do I close more deals by coding this piece of information in, or do I close less deals by coding this piece of information in? And this is how we grow a business. It's not through some crazy, wacky, woo-wah, amazing this funnel thing or this piece of copy. It's just small little iterations over time by defining the problem, seeking the information to solve that problem, applying it by recoding the variable and allowing that code to give assent to the result. And hopefully the result is better, okay? And, by changing the code of this thing, by watching the YouTube video on sales and changing the code of the pitch, we now have version 2 of our sales pitch, which now creates version 2 of our sales script, which creates version 2 of our sales process, which now creates version 2 of our business. And so you must learn to think in versions, okay? Where you've got version 1, which is where you are right now. You don't even have a version 1 yet because you haven't got all of your variables lined up. But when you finish this program and when you've been through all the videos and you've built the thing, you've now, all it is an experiment. You don't have a business, you have an experiment, okay? Once you've got the avatar, the offer, the outbound process, content process, sales process, solution, and your sort of personal identity in a row, this is a business, right? And all you're trying to do is not grow the business or become successful. You're just testing the variables that you've got. And if you don't get the result you want, i.e. you don't sign clients, you don't make money, all you do is you find out what about this chain of variables is not working. You drill all the way down to the thing that you think the problem is. You go and seek new information. You implant that information into the code of the variable that you think isn't working. You bring it back to the drawing board, you test the variables and the combination of variables again, and you see if it works. And that's all success is. If this isn't a penny drop, pin drop, aha, holy shit, epiphany moment for you, I don't know what will be. This is how you win. This is also why it takes a year or 2 or 3 years to get to that point where you consider yourself successful, because experiments and tests take time to run. Do not forget this. It's just information, applying it in exactly the same way that an ant would evolve. Like, you know, it's the parallel between biology and business is insurmountable and, you know, unarguable. It's just there, you know. And so if we can learn to think like with DNA and variants and stuff, like, goodness me, you're going to be successful. You know, if this variant works, obviously you're making more money, and most of the time the changes you make are going to suck and they're not going to work, but sometimes you'll find something that does. So that's basically, in a nutshell, how to actually win and succeed. And like, you know, if you know this and your competitors don't, like, you're going to crush them. Okay, and by the way, just so you're aware, this diagram took me an entire week to build. Like this idea of the ant and the variables and the micro macro shell based thinking and trying to bring all these parallels together. Like, I understood this, but I actually spent an entire week on this one diagram that you see on the screen here and explaining it. So that's the level of importance that I want you to assign to this in your memory. Though I wouldn't have gone to that length of effort if I didn't think it was one of the most important things that you could possibly learn to grow a business ever. So here's some good news, right? So by using this program, your version 1 of business is probably my version 67. So whenever you buy mentorship, what you're doing is you're buying a version, right? So just by using this program, you have a huge head start, because my version 1 of all of these things here, like my V1 of of these variables sucked. My avatar version 1, like my V1 when I first started, was like 4 sentences. Now it's like 30 pages, you know. It's like tens of thousands of words almost. And like, you know, maybe not tens of thousands, but lots and lots of words, right? And so when you're creating your avatar using my framework, you're borrowing my version 67 or my version 85 or my version 93 or whatever. It's the same thing with, you know, like EasyGrow, right? So, for example, in EasyGrow, I've done the maths here. I've tested nearly 100 different cold email scripts to find what works. So when you buy EasyGrow, which I'm sure you will in the future as you become more successful, you're just going to plug it, right? You know, no fucking shame in that. You know my intentions here. But when you buy EasyGrow, you're buying like a version. You're not buying a program or a course. You're buying a shortcut, because you could test 100 cold email scripts yourself, but to do that and stay sane, and trust me, it's not easy, might take you like 4 or 5 years. So by buying the program, you get where you would have got in 4 or 5 years in like 4 weeks. Does that make sense? So you're buying variables. And you know, my version in cold calling, I've iterated my cold calling script, and the cold calling scripts in EasyGrow have been iterated hundreds and hundreds of times. I've made tens of thousands of cold calls. And so in EasyGrow, if your version 1 is going to be my version 128, for example. So this is how you make obscene levels of progress, and this is how you get rich real damn fast, is by just finding what works and then implementing it. And this is why we charge money for EasyGrow, and it's why we charge quite a lot of money for EasyGrow, is because it's really fucking valuable, because it can save you like 5 years of testing and suffering. That's pretty worthwhile, you know? Same thing for my content process. So in EasyGrow, we teach how to do content. And, you know, I'm going to teach you how to do content at a more basic level in this program. But if you want to get serious with it and really become a millionaire and shit, like, you know, you're going to get my my content process, you know, that would have been, like, your version 1 can be my version 13, and you can make 2 years of progress in like 2 weeks just by going through the content, right? So you're essentially, you know, it's a shortcut. When you buy things like EasyGrow, when you go through things like this program, you're basically just shortcutting how long it takes you. You can get to where I am probably a lot faster than I did, purely because, you know, you get to sit on my shoulders. And I think it was Isaac Newton that said this. He summarized this quite well. He said, if I see far, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. And not that I'm a giant, and not that, you know, you should stand on my shoulders, because I got a decent level of core strength, but I don't think that would be appropriate, right? This is how it works, okay? And this is the diagram. So, in all of its glory, it took me this thing sent me to the darkness for a week or two. Like trying to bring this abstraction out of my brain and my understanding of it onto one document. Well, that took quite some thinking. It looks simple, but this is the thing about teaching, and you'll learn this as you get clients and you start to develop programs in the future. Is teaching is about taking very, very, very complicated ideas and making them as simple to understand as possible. And the premise of this seems real simple to you now, but untangling that and making it simple is tough. And that's kind of summarized by Einstein's E equals mc squared, like that. And then we've all heard of that famous that's that famous equation before, but it summarizes a scientific theory that is so infinitely complex in like 3 words, like 3 letters. God damn it, like that guy was a genius. That's the sign of a genius, by the way, is being able to take really complex ideas and make them simple. This isn't genius level, by the way, like what I've done here. Like this is, I don't know, depends on what your perspective of genius is, but this is just like a genius invents this shit. Like Charles Darwin, for example, was the genius for, like I based this thinking around his thinking, right? So, but yeah, that's kind of what you need to do if you're teaching. So you're welcome. Anyway, so the scientific method. So we're going to talk about the scientific method twice. Okay, so we're going to discuss it briefly now, and sort of we're going to talk about what it is, and then we're going to actually later on, after a little bit more context, explain how to do it. Because the way that we integrate information into the code of our business is by using the scientific method. There is a very, very, very specific way, a very scientific way that that this must be handled with, I think, 13 or 14 different steps that must be followed. If you just start trying to fuck around with your business code and your DNA of your business without the scientific method, you are going to burn the thing down and destroy it. And so you must follow a specific process. So we're going to get into that soon, but for now, let me get through the scientific method. So the big question that I'm sure you're now asking is, okay, well, Charlie, if building a business is just about finding the right variables, how do I do that? Like, how do I find level 3 variables that actually get results? And how do I know if new information is good or bad? Like, how do I know if the new code I've introduced works? And how do I build a profitable business? Well, the best business people are scientists, right? Like I said, not in the lab coat sense, but in the sense that they know how to test. They know how to experiment. And so you must learn to think scientifically. So I find it hilarious how, that sort of archetype in school, of the kid in biology or chemistry or maths or physics or geography. And the kid in school is like, oh, when am I ever going to use this in the real world? It's like that kid has no fucking idea. Like I paid a lot of attention, in case you can't tell, I paid a lot of attention in biology and chemistry when I was 15, 16, because I knew that the rules of those games, the rules of those disciplines, of those studies can be carried across. And, I didn't know that at 15. I wasn't cognizant of that. But I had this idea that when I was like a kid, I could see the parallels between what I was learning in these disciplines. And one example, I was in geography and we were learning about coastal erosion. I think I was 15 or 16, we were learning about coastal erosion. And, we were learning about how like different coastlines form because of the ocean and stuff. And, at the time, I remember when I was like 16, this is when I was really starting to sort of get interested in business. And I was sort of trying to parallel that over. So I was looking at how businesses fail and how they erode over time. And then I was thinking, okay, well, coastal erosion is this gradual process that happens as a result of like nature. And maybe that's the same thing is true in business with the way that things decay. And then I looked at history. So I've been doing this for a long time, but all of this to say that shit that you learned in school is actually quite useful if you just know what to look for and how to apply it. Like another example, in chemistry, when I was 16, I learned about alloying. Alloying in chemistry is basically where you take two metals and you put them together to make a stronger metal. And that's like how steel is made, right? It's called alloying. And in business, one thing I've done is I've taken one cold email script and another cold email script that are totally different, so totally different elements, and I've combined them together to make the ultimate cold email script. That I've alloyed them together. And so I knew to do that in business because I remembered what I learned in chemistry. And so this is what I mean by thinking like a scientist. You know, all of these things that you learn outside of business can be applied because business isn't real. Business is basically just a fucking amalgamate of variables and different disciplines. And if you become multidisciplinary and you learn all these different things, you can start applying the rules and you can destroy everyone. So not that you want to destroy everyone, but I mean, you can outcompete everyone, right? So instead of trying to build a company, what you need to do is imagine that you're running a series of experiments, okay? You're not trying to build a business. You're not trying to become, you know, this entrepreneur. You're trying to become the best scientist and become the best at running experiments. And the iterative process is called the scientific method. So the scientific method basically takes on 4 steps. So step 1 of the scientific method is to formulate a hypothesis, which is a statement of, it's like a guess, basically. It's like a statement, it's a guess. It's like, I think if I do this, this will happen, right? So for example, my hypothesis could be, I think if I go out in the sun with no sun cream on today, with the level of UV that the sun is currently at, I will not burn. And then the step 2 is I will test that hypothesis. I'm going to go out in the sun for like 20 minutes. And then step 3 is tomorrow I'm going to see if I'm burned or not. I'm going to observe the results. And if I do burn, then I'm going to formulate a new hypothesis, which will be, okay, well, maybe I need to go out with sun cream on, right? And so we have this 4-step process to scientifically test anything, and it's the same thing in business. So right now, if you're watching this for the first time, you do not have a fully developed hypothesis. You have your avatar, maybe you've got your offer done, but you haven't got version 1 of your product. You haven't got version 1 of your outbound systems or your content systems. You haven't got version 1 of anything else. That's fine. I'm not worried about you not having this yet, unless you're rewatching this video and you have it, then good for you. I'm worried about you knowing how to think iteratively for when you do try to build these things, okay? Because the reason I'm teaching you the scientific method and the iterative process is because it can be used for every single variable in your business. Like, how do you build a good product? You iterate it. How do you build a good cold email system? You iterate it. How do you build a good sense of identity and a good character and a good mindset? You iterate it. You make gradual small changes over time, right? Sometimes you can make extreme changes real quick and make a lot of progress real quick, but usually it's done slowly, iteratively. And so if you can learn the scientific method and you can understand it on a level that is deep and you can comprehend it with your brain properly, then when it comes to building these other variables in your business, you're going to fly by the iterations and you're going to make so much more progress. So the answers are all there. Everything you want lies on the other side of hundreds or thousands of little tests. Once again, like buying EasyGrow, for example, just means you have to do less tests. We iterate our way to success in business little by little. And so the way to look at this is to imagine that, you know, we've got a version 1 of our business and we've got where we want to be. So we've got the crown. We want to wear the crown. This is the goal. And this is version X. So the only thing that stands between you and being where you want to be is a series of versions. And so version X could be like version 617. And there is a definitive number of versions that you have to run through to just get to where you want to go. And every time you test a new version and make an ever so slight incrementally smaller step towards your goal, you put a step. You take a step, you take a step, you take a step until you get to version, you know, whatever it is. And then you're at where you want to be. All you have to do to get to where you want to go is iterate and change the version. Like the iPhone. How do we get to iPhone 16? Well, we start with iPhone 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and 6, you know, and so on. So version 1, the version, by the way, is the hypothesis. So when I'm talking about V1, this is hypothesis number 1. When I talk about version 20, this is hypothesis number 20. And a hypothesis is essentially a guess. So for example, I guess that if I line up this script, this subject line, and this lead source, and this deliverability method, and this software, I will get this result from my cold emails. And so this V1 or hypothesis 1 is the first version of your business after you finish all of your training. So a hypothesis can exist in the macro level or the micro level. And so this is demonstrated by this diagram here. So at level 1, you know, with these level 1 macro variables that we've got here, if you string these together, you've got version 1 of your hypothesis. But each variable at level 1, as you know, is made up of the level 2. And so to code for level 1, we have level 2. And so we have our level 2 hypothesis, which creates this variable, which then creates this hypothesis, which creates the business. And it goes even deeper here where, you know, the hypothesis goes to level 3. So you've got your level 3 variables here, and the hypothesis is the string of those. If you put them together, you're guessing it's going to work, right? That then creates a level 2 hypothesis, which is strung together with other level 2 variables, which then create the level 1 variable, which then is strung together with other level 1 variables to create the level 1 hypothesis. And so when we're running experiments and being scientific, we always iterate and change at the level 3 variable level. So we're going as low as we can to the minute details, but we have to understand the bigger picture that those are making up a bigger hypothesis, which makes up a component of an even bigger hypothesis. Okay? So you will test your version 1 hypothesis as you go out to the market and try and make money and bank profit. But one thing is for sure, your version 1 hypothesis is not going to be perfect. So even when you've gone through this program, you're going to be way more successful and more likely to be successful having gone through this program than had you not. Same thing with Easy Grow, for example. You're just 10 times, it's probably more like 1,000 times more likely to get clients and make a ton of money real quick. But version 1 is not going to be the one. You're going to have to make iterations and so many changes over time because you've got different markets, different problems and stuff like that. So we just basically edge closer towards perfection through experimentation. And so version X that you can see up here refers to the hypothesis number that you will be at when you hit your goal. So for example, your version X for hitting $10,000 a month could be version 17 or it could be version 98. It really depends on how close you are. If your version 1 is real close to being what you need to be to hit 10K a month, then you might only need version 5 to get to 10K a month. But if you didn't have this program, then your version 1, whether you know it or not, you've got a version, right? Your version 1, maybe you'd need like version 683 just to get to 10K a month, right? So it depends on how close you were when you begin, but this version X refers to like what version you'll be at when you hit your goal, right? And it depends on when you're starting. This is also another reason to not quit, by the way, because every time you switch niche or quit or change, like you go back to version 1 and all these steps you took, it's kind of stupid. So not everyone starts equally in business. So you might look in the community and you might see some results from the academy or from the program. And you might see that some people are making more progress than you. You might see people going from 0 to 10K a month in like a month. You might get stressed out and worried. But not everyone starts equally in business. So don't be surprised if some people get there in less versions than you. So business is like a 100-meter race, but unfair. Some people, when they get into business, are going to start at the 90-meter line. So they're going to start 10 meters away from the finish line. Some people are going to start at the 10-meter line. So they're going to be a little bit further ahead. Some people will start middle way through the race. Like when you're starting business, you're not, if you take 1,000 people and they're all trying to do this program, you are all at different levels. Some of you have done like things before. Some of you have done nothing before. Some of you are able to articulate yourself. Some aren't. Some of you have really good English. Some of you won't. Like you're all going to have different variables, and therefore if you're all in the same race, some of you are going to start further ahead than others, and therefore you're going to finish faster. That's fine. For example, let's say that someone does this program, but they've already worked in sales for 5 years. Like they won't need much iteration to find out what sales system is going to work. And maybe someone starts this program and they get into the same niche as you, but their parents are people in that niche. They're just further ahead than you already. They just are.
So basically the goal is to start as early as possible and as fast as possible. I mean, what else can you really do? I mean, like there's not really much. Like just overload yourself with experience as fast as possible. And I mean, yeah. Like, this is all like to do with just what you have. Like, everyone's born with nothing. I mean, maybe your parents are successful, but you as a person, you're not born with any skills or anything. And I think the goal is to just try develop something, even if it's like crap, just like something that like maybe someone else wouldn't have, even if it's like not okay. I just explained that really badly. I really don't know how to explain it. Like this is another thing, like I can't articulate myself very well, but I mean, yeah, I think I just get as much experience as I can, and with every day. Hopefully, I'm pushing myself further ahead than other people around me. I mean, me doing this now. I mean, I've definitely got a good start. Like Charlie said, like Charlie Ch- Charlie had to figure this out by himself. Okay, well, not by himself. He had a mentor, but like, he, all I'm doing is just following what he tells me to do, and I will be successful. I mean, it's not exactly hard. I mean, I could probably definitely do this quicker than he did, depending on how much time and effort I put in. But yeah, I think the earlier you start, the better chance you have, and just make sure you stay in the game long enough to see the results. You know, it's all good starting early, but if I get to like 19 and I'm like, fuck this business shit, I just want to work a 9 to 5, like, game's over. But if someone at 19 starts business then and does it for like until they're 30, they're gonna have an empire of results, aren't they? So yeah, and I think that's definitely something I struggle with as well. Like for the first 2 weeks of me doing this, it's pretty consistent. I was doing like averaging like 2 hours a day, maybe 2.5 hours a day. On the weekend, like three, four. But now it's like every other day I stream. It's really bad. So yeah, I mean that's like a little goal for 2026 maybe. Consistency. Just keep at it. Cause yeah. Hey, but I mean the mindset module isn't too far away now. It's only what, like 25, like probably like an hour away in videos. I mean no, wait,
You know,
yeah, okay, so it's gonna be like 2 hours in videos, and then we're on the big mindset module. But yeah, software stack. Holy bum. Okay, I think a lot of these are in this pretty cool Discord server called Tool Suite. They have like hella flipping uh what's it called? Softwares. Like look. Oh, I can't zoom in. Can I? No, I can't. But you can just wait. I think it says somewhere at the bottom. No, it doesn't. No man. You can see just the different. Wait, no. You can find it, can't you? If you just search up Tool Suite. Yeah, there it is. Oh, bro, what happened to that actual Yeah, okay. This is what I was looking at before. It's basically everything that you can get for like 29, 20, yeah, $30 a month. Just yeah, it's definitely all worth it. Click 100%. PP Spy. Like, let's see, are any of these? A lot of these are free, I think. Yeah, Zapier. That's free, isn't it? ClickFunnels. I do think a lot of these are free, but yeah. Anyway, let's carry on.
and so you can't compare yourself to other people in the program and base, their
Oh, hold up. It's 11:30, bro. Mm, mm, mm. I might go grab myself a snack really quickly and play a little bit of Wordle as well. Is it what? Am I stupid? Wordle. Actually, no, I can't be asked to play. Bro, this is bad. I feel like I'm streaming like not business related things. I feel bad. This is I need to log back in. How long have I been streaming for? 2.5 hours. Oh my god. I'm getting through this flower shit, okay? It's rough, but it's getting there. She better like this, man. Took me ages to do. Like actually ages to do. Okay. I'm gonna get a snack. I'll be back in a sec.
Their progress on your progress, because where they started is totally different. It would literally be like lining up to race someone against 100 meters, and then you start at the 0 meter line at the beginning.
So excited for Christmas, man. No, no. Like, I'm kind of past the age of presents and gifts and shit, but you know. Hmm. I think I'm gonna finish up the. I have 3 more little in a bit of my flowers to get down and stick, and then I might call it a night, to be honest. But yeah. Right. Well, let's get doing it. Actually, no, not three more, four more, but oh well. We got it.
And they're starting at the 58-meter line, and then they beat you, and then you're like shocked and surprised, like, what? How are they further ahead than me? It's like, well, they started like halfway further than you, right? So if basically the point I'm making here is that if someone is achieving things faster than you are, it could be because they're working harder than you. That's a huge variable, because the harder you work, the faster you can test. That's all hard work is, by the way. It's just faster experimentation, putting cause to effect faster and finding the thing that works faster. But like, if someone's further ahead than you, it's because maybe before they started, they've already done a bunch of experimentation. Like your version 1 and their version 1 are completely different in how close they are to the goal, right? So version 1 is not this universal thing where everyone starts at the beginning. Like, if someone in the academy has access to Easy Grow, then their version 1 is going to be so much closer to the goal than yours is, because they've got such an advantage because of the depth of information around acquisition in that, right? Or the depth of acquisition around cold email or sales or whatever, right? And we're going to get into that in this program, but like, I'm just going to give you the basics, right? And then Easy Grow will take you to that point where you're making like millions and millions of dollars, right? Or multi six figures. So macro versus micro iteration. So we can think about the iterative process in the macro or the micro. So macro is big and micro is component of big, relatively smaller in size to big. And so, when we're looking at this diagram here, we've got the business, which is the macro, and then we've got the level 1 variables, which are the micro, which are part of the business. But then what we can do is we can also see level 1 variables as the macro, and then we can see level 2 variables as the micro inside of the macro. And then what we can also do is we can see level 2 variables as the macro, and we can see level 3 variables as the micro inside of the macro. And then we can take it further and see level 3 variables as macro, and see the DNA or the genetic information or the information we're using as the micro inside of the macro. And so to give you a little bit more tangible examples, or a more tangible understanding of this. So the universe, as we know it, is the macro, and our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, is the micro. And you could see the Milky Way galaxy as the macro, and the solar system is micro. So micro is part of macro. So our solar system could be the macro, and Earth could be the micro. Like, Earth is part of the solar system. And Earth could be the macro, and Europe could be the micro. It's relative in size. And then Europe could be the macro, and UK, the country of the UK, could be the micro. And then the UK could be the macro, and Somerset County could be the micro, and Somerset's the county that I grew up in. Big up Somerset. Just thought I'd throw in a little bit of Charlie Morgan trivia for you there, but Somerset's like a place in the UK, and so like, it's inside of the UK, and the UK is inside of Europe, and Europe is inside of Earth, and Earth is inside of the solar system, and so this is how.
Wait, let me glue this one more thing down. I want to look at something. Not one more thing. I mean, I have three more to do, but I do want to take a sneak peek of where Somerset actually is, because I know I've been there before. Because I think my granddad, my mum's side. So I'm a for context. I mean, for future reference, I'm a lot closer with my dad's side of my family than my mum's. But like, well, in terms of grandparents wise and stuff, like, I'm much more closer with my dad's mum than my mum's dad or whatever. Anyway, I do want to. Oh, I don't want to leak my location. Hold on. Hold on, buddy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Wait, hold on. If I click on this, does it bring up like where I am? Yeah, it does. Okay. Yeah, GG's chat. Could have fucked myself over real quickly. Anyway, where's Oh wait, I don't really wanna. I feel like if I type anything in, it's gonna come up with my postcode or something. Somerset's down here. Let me just need to have a look around my screen to check, like, fuck else, like postcode isn't on there or something. But yeah, no, Somerset is really really close on, isn't it? This is all Somerset. Damn. So okay, I do live like in the West Midlands, so like Charlie's actually like very close to me actually. Yeah, because the Cotswolds is only it's like an hour drive, I think. Downton Abbey. Damn. This is this is Charlie Morgan's home. What the fuck is this? Okay, what kind of medieval dark shit is this? Straight out of Game of Thrones, bro. Glastonbury. Hell yeah. The UK is like really like small the more you grow up. I kind of just realized that. Like, I just feel like the UK is just very small. Like it gets progressively smaller the more I grow up. Bath, I've been to Bath before. I used to think like my city was massive, and now it's like, bro, we're all really close together. Like if you know people in Gloucester, then you know people in Cheltenham and Bristol, and if you know people in Bristol, you know probably people down in Somerset, and if you know people in Somerset, you probably have been to Plymouth. Is it Plymouth? Plymouth. Plymouth. It is Plymouth, I think. But correct me if I'm wrong. Like we're all very close together. I mean, I can't talk to the people in Glasgow and Edinburgh and stuff in Scotland, but yeah, you guys are different up here, man. I am. Yeah, I don't man. But I'm talking like from Manchester downwards. Like we're all so close together. Abergavenny, Blackwood, Cardiff. No, I was gonna go down to Cardiff for the Christmas market down there. It's meant to be really good. Highly rated apparently. We are gonna go to London as well. It was either London or Cardiff, but London is expensive. So I don't know if I'd like to live in London or not. British Museum. Oh fuck. I don't know if my stream's gonna like get cancelled or something when I upload it to YouTube. Yeah, I didn't just clock on to what I was looking at just then. Fuck. Guys, I swear, it was not genitals, it was just the sculpture. I don't know, man. Hopefully I don't get like cancelled, but three more to do. Let's get it.
Oh, we need to start thinking is like,
Wait, hold on, chat. We might have to do a reload of the glue gun. Shit's getting Ow! Mm. Okay, let's calm down after. Ow. Ow. Glue is so hot. Yeah, guys, I mean, can't tell, but I just put hot glue on my hand by accident. Yeah, okay, we're actually gonna hit a reload really quickly. Oh, I could just finish it off in the morning. Because like then I have to wait for the glue gun to heat up again and it's just a pain in the ass. Okay. We might wrap it up here then chat and then carry on in the morning.